Call security. She's not leaving this house until my mother's ring is found. The words cut through the ballroom like broken glass. Beneath the cold white light of the chandelier, Elena Ruiz stood frozen beside a silver cleaning cart. Her faded uniform was still damp at the sleeves, and one of her old black shoes had split along the side. Around her, nearly 50 guests from the city's wealthiest families watched in silence. At the center of the room stood Victoria Hale, CEO of a billion-dollar investment company, gripping an empty velvet jewelry box. The diamond ring that had belonged to her late mother was gone. And Elena had been the last person inside Victoria's bedroom. "I didn't take it," Elena said quietly. Victoria's younger sister, Claire, folded her arms. Her elegant red dress shimmered as she stepped closer. "Then explain why no one else entered the room." Elena looked toward the staircase. 2 hotel security guards had already blocked the front doors of the private mansion. Outside, rain struck the windows in hard silver lines. Only 10 minutes earlier, the house had been filled with music and laughter. Victoria was hosting a charity dinner in honor of her mother, a woman whose portrait hung above the fireplace. Now the musicians had stopped playing, the waiters stood motionless, and every face had turned toward the maid. Elena's hands trembled, but she kept them at her sides. In her apron pocket was an old photograph, its corners soft from years of being touched. It showed Elena as a little girl beside her mother, both wearing housekeeping uniforms in the same mansion. On the back, written in fading blue ink, were 6 words. "Always protect the truth, even alone." Elena pressed her fingers against the photograph through the fabric. Victoria's personal assistant, Nathan Cole, came down the stairs carrying Elena's worn canvas bag. "We found this in the staff room," he announced. He placed it on the marble table and emptied it in front of everyone. A bus card. A half-eaten sandwich. A bottle of medicine. A small library book with a cracked brown cover. Then a folded children's drawing fell onto the floor. It showed a woman in a maid's uniform holding hands with a little boy beneath a yellow sun. Some guests looked away. Claire did not. "Search her pockets." Elena's face went pale. "My son is waiting for me," she whispered. "Please don't make this worse." Victoria stared at her. For a brief moment, something uncertain moved behind the CEO's hard expression. But then Nathan leaned close and murmured something into her ear. Her eyes became cold again. "Empty your pockets, Elena." Slowly, Elena removed the photograph and placed it on the table. Then she pulled out a key, 2 coins, and a small sewing needle wrapped in paper. "No ring." Claire exhaled sharply. She must have hidden it somewhere. A security guard reached for Elena's arm. At that exact moment, a quiet voice came from the staircase. "Don't touch her." Everyone turned. Victoria's 12-year-old son, Noah, stood barefoot on the top step, clutching a small black device against his chest. The boy rarely spoke to strangers. Since his grandmother's death, he had barely spoken to anyone. But now his eyes were fixed on Nathan. "I saw who took the ring," Noah said. Nathan's smile disappeared. Then the boy raised the device and added, "And the camera saw it too." For 3 seconds, no one moved. Rain tapped against the tall windows. The chandelier hummed softly above them. Even the security guard's hand remained suspended inches from Elena's arm. Victoria looked up at her son. "Noah, come downstairs." He did not move. Nathan recovered first. He gave a small laugh, but it sounded forced. "He's confused. That device is probably one of his toys." Noah's fingers tightened around it. "It isn't a toy." Victoria's face changed. Since his grandmother's funeral 8 months earlier, Noah had become a shadow inside the mansion. He ate alone, avoided guests, and spent hours taking apart old radios, clocks, and broken cameras. Most adults assumed he was hiding from grief. Elena never did. She had started working for the Hale family 3 years earlier, after her husband died in a warehouse accident and left her with hospital bills, overdue rent, and a 6-year-old son named Mateo. She cleaned offices before sunrise, private homes during the day, and sometimes hotel kitchens at night. Her life was measured in bus transfers, medicine bottles, and the coins she counted before buying groceries. Yet every afternoon, before leaving the Hale mansion, Elena placed a warm cup of cocoa outside Noah's room. She never knocked. She never asked him to talk. She simply left a note beside the cup. "You don't have to speak to be heard." One evening, months earlier, Elena had found him sitting beneath the grand staircase with a broken security camera in his lap. A house technician had thrown it away after replacing the mansion's system. Noah had been trying to repair it with a tiny screwdriver. "My grandmother taught me," he had whispered. Elena sat several feet away, giving him space. "Then she taught you something worth keeping." That was the first full sentence he had spoken to anyone in weeks. After that, Noah began collecting discarded electronics. Elena brought him an old library book about cameras and simple circuits, the same cracked brown book that had just fallen from her bag. Matteo had borrowed it first, but when he heard about the lonely boy in the mansion, he told his mother to give it to Noah. "Maybe he needs it more than me," Matteo had said. Noah read the book until the pages loosened from the spine. Then he built a small camera from broken parts and hid it near his grandmother's portrait, facing the ballroom and the lower staircase. He called it his memory keeper. Elena was the only person who knew it existed. Now, standing above the crowd, Noah pressed a button on the black device. A tiny screen flickered to life, filling the room with pale blue light. Victoria took one step forward. "Show me." Noah looked at Elena first. Her eyes were wet, but she gave him the smallest nod. The recording began with a grainy view of the ballroom before the guests arrived. Elena crossed the frame carrying folded towels. Minutes later, Victoria entered, placed the velvet ring box on a side table, and hurried away when someone called her name. Then another figure appeared. The person glanced toward the hallway, reached for the jewelry box, and slipped the ring into a pocket. A gasp moved through the room. But before the face came into view, the screen froze. The battery symbol flashed red. Nathan stepped forward quickly. "That proves nothing." Noah looked directly at him. "Yes, it does," he said. "Because I made another copy." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "A second copy?" he asked. Noah nodded toward the hallway behind him. "In my room." Victoria turned to one of the guards. "Go with him." But before the guard could move, Claire stepped forward. "This is becoming ridiculous. We're letting a frightened child control the entire room." Her voice was calm, but her fingers pressed tightly against the stem of her glass. Elena noticed. She also noticed something else. A thin red thread clung to the silver clasp of the empty jewelry box. The same shade as Claire's dress. Elena said nothing. She had spent years cleaning rooms after wealthy people left them behind. She knew how much truth remained in small things: a lipstick mark on the wrong glass, muddy footprints beneath a polished chair, a torn receipt hidden inside a perfect handbag. People looked at maids as if they were invisible. That was why maids often saw everything. Victoria glanced at Elena. "You knew about this camera?" "Yes." "And you never told me?" "It belonged to Noah," Elena replied. "It made him feel safe." Claire gave a cold laugh. "So she helped your son secretly record the house. That alone should get her arrested." A murmur passed through the guests. Nathan seized the moment. "She had access to every room," he said. "She knew where the cameras were. She could have staged the whole thing." Elena's face remained still, though her heart pounded against her ribs. One of the guests, a well-known attorney, shook his head. "People like her learn how to survive by lying." The words landed harder than Elena expected. For a moment, she saw Matteo sitting alone in their small apartment, eating cereal from a chipped bowl, waiting for the sound of her key in the door. She thought of the rent notice hidden beneath the kitchen clock. She thought of the medicine in her bag. Then Victoria spoke. "Elena, until we know the truth, you are suspended." The room seemed to tilt. Elena lowered her eyes. "I understand." No shouting. No begging. No angry accusation. She simply removed the small brass name tag from her uniform and placed it beside the old photograph on the marble table. That quiet act made Victoria look away. Claire moved closer to the velvet box, pretending to inspect it. As she did, the red thread vanished beneath her hand. Elena saw that too. Noah came down the stairs beside the guard, holding a small memory card between two fingers. Nathan blocked their path. "Give it to me. I'll connect it to the television." Noah stepped back. "No." His answer was so sharp that the room fell silent again. Nathan forced a smile. "I'm only trying to help." "You touched my camera yesterday," Noah said. Nathan's face changed. "Only slightly." But Elena saw it. She looked toward the ballroom wall, where a decorative mirror reflected the corridor leading to Victoria's bedroom. In that reflection, she noticed a small black box beneath the console table. A wireless signal jammer. The kind Nathan used during private business meetings. That explained why the recording had frozen at the exact moment the thief turned toward the camera. Elena finally raised her voice. "Don't play the copy yet." Victoria stared at her. "Why?" Elena looked at Nathan, then at Claire's clenched hand. "Because whoever took the ring," she said softly, "already knows where the evidence is." A sudden crash came from upstairs. Noah's bedroom door had just slammed shut. And someone was inside. The guard ran toward the staircase, but Elena caught his sleeve. "Not that way." Everyone stared at her. Elena picked up the old photograph from the marble table. Her mother's faded image stood beside the younger version of Elena in the mansion's rear corridor. Behind them, almost hidden by shadow, was a narrow wooden panel beneath the staircase. A servant's passage. Most of the mansion had been renovated years ago, but Elena's mother had once shown her the old routes used by housekeepers to move quietly between bedrooms and laundry rooms. "There's another entrance to Noah's room," Elena said. Victoria frowned. "How do you know?" "My mother worked here before I did." Elena rushed through the kitchen, her worn shoes slipping against the polished floor. Noah followed close behind, clutching the memory card. Victoria and the guards came after them. At the back of the pantry, Elena pushed aside a tall shelf of glassware. Dust rose into the cold light. Behind it was a narrow door nearly invisible beneath layers of paint. It would not open. One guard reached for a tool, but Elena knelt and studied the rusted lock. Then she removed the sewing needle wrapped in paper from her pocket. Her mother had taught her to repair old uniform clasps, music boxes, and jammed cabinet locks because the Hale family once threw away anything that stopped working. Elena slid the needle beneath the latch. A soft click echoed through the pantry. The door opened. Noah looked at her with wide eyes. Inside, the passage smelled of old wood and dust. They moved in darkness until voices reached them through the wall ahead. "You said the camera was useless," Claire whispered. "It should have been," Nathan answered. "Give me the card." Victoria stopped breathing. Through a crack in the panel, they saw Claire standing in Noah's bedroom. Nathan was beside the desk, holding a small metal case. The black signal jammer lay open at his feet. Claire pulled something from the hidden pocket of her red dress. The diamond ring. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth. Nathan snatched it from Claire. "You were supposed to place it in Elena's bag," he hissed. "I didn't have time." The room behind the panel became completely silent. Elena pushed the door open. Claire spun around. Nathan dropped the ring, and it struck the wooden floor with a small, bright sound. For a second, no one spoke. Then Victoria stepped into the room. "You framed her." Claire's face collapsed. Nathan moved toward the window, but the guards blocked him. Claire began to cry. She admitted that Nathan had discovered she was drowning in secret debts. He promised to sell the ring and erase what she owed if she helped him blame Elena. Once Elena was dismissed, Nathan planned to replace the household staff with people loyal to him and gain access to Victoria's private business files. But Noah's hidden camera had captured more than they knew. The memory card in his hand contained the recording from the ballroom. The small black device he had carried downstairs was only the screen. The real camera had uploaded every few minutes to an old laptop beneath his bed. Noah opened it. The video played clearly. Claire took the ring. Nathan entered moments later, handed her Elena's staff key, and pointed toward the room where her bag had been left. Victoria watched the screen without blinking. When the recording ended, Elena quietly placed her brass name tag beside the laptop. "I think you have your answer now." Victoria turned toward her, her face pale with shame. But before she could speak, Noah stepped between them. "She protected me," he said. "Even when you didn't protect her." Noah's words remained in the room long after he stopped speaking. Victoria looked at Elena as if she were seeing her for the first time, not as the woman who polished the silver, carried laundry upstairs, or disappeared before the important guests arrived, but as someone who had quietly held together parts of her family that money had failed to reach. The guards led Nathan and Claire downstairs. Claire kept her eyes on the floor. Nathan said nothing. When they were gone, Victoria picked up the old photograph from Noah's desk. Dust had settled along its softened edges. "This was taken here," she said. Elena nodded. "My mother, Rosa, worked in this house for 22 years. Victoria turned the photograph over and read the faded blue words. "Always protect the truth, even alone." Her hands began to tremble. "I remember her," Victoria whispered. "She used to fix my mother's jewelry boxes." Elena gave a small, sad smile. She fixed anything people thought was too old to matter. When Elena was 9, her mother had brought her to the mansion after school because they could not afford a babysitter. Elena sat quietly in servant corridors with an old book in her lap while Rosa repaired broken clasps, hidden drawers, and antique locks. That was how Elena knew about the passage. That was why she carried the sewing needle. And that was why, years later, she recognized the signal jammer beneath the console table. Rosa had taught her to notice when a room was being made deliberately silent. But the camera had not been Elena's idea. That miracle had begun with something much smaller. A cup of cocoa. A note beneath a bedroom door. A library book with a cracked brown cover. After Noah stopped speaking, therapists, tutors, and specialists had come and gone. They asked him questions, measured his progress, and discussed him while he sat only a few feet away. Elena did none of that. She simply noticed that the boy watched the technicians whenever they repaired the mansion's cameras. So she took Mateo's favorite library book from her bag and offered it to him. "My son said lonely things shouldn't be thrown away," she had told Noah. The book showed him how broken parts could become useful again. Noah built the hidden camera from pieces found in a discarded box. Elena helped him clean the lens, but she never asked what he planned to record. He wanted to preserve the sound of his grandmother's piano. He was afraid that one day he would forget it. Instead, the camera preserved the truth. Victoria sat slowly on the edge of Noah's bed. "All this happened because you gave him a book." Elena shook her head. "No. It happened because my son was willing to give away the only book he loved." Noah opened the cover. Inside was a message written in a child's uneven handwriting. "For someone who needs to remember that broken things still work." Victoria pressed her fingers to her lips. For years, she had donated millions to charities and spoken at events about changing lives. Yet the act that saved her family had cost nothing but kindness from a poor little boy she had never met. She looked at Elena. "I accused you in front of everyone." "Yes." "I let them humiliate you." "Yes." Victoria's voice broke. "How do I make that right?" Elena picked up her name tag, but she did not pin it back onto her uniform. "You don't start with me," she said. "You start by teaching your son that telling the truth was worth the risk." Victoria did exactly what Elena asked. She returned to the ballroom with Noah beside her and the diamond ring in her hand. The guests were still gathered beneath the chandelier, speaking in hushed voices as the rain softened against the windows. Elena stood near the doorway, holding her canvas bag. Victoria walked to the center of the room. "I accused an innocent woman because it was easier to believe suspicion than character," she said. "Elena Ruiz did not steal this ring. She protected my son, my home, and the truth." No one moved. The attorney who had insulted Elena lowered his eyes. Claire's empty place near the fireplace seemed to cast a shadow over the entire room. Victoria placed the ring back inside the velvet box. Then she faced Elena. "I am sorry." Elena studied her for a moment. She had heard apologies before, quick words spoken by people who wanted their discomfort to end. But Victoria's voice carried no authority now. "Only shame." "An apology matters," Elena said softly. "But what you do after it matters more." By morning, Nathan had been removed from the company, and the evidence from Noah's camera had been turned over to the authorities. Claire agreed to seek help for the debts and choices she had hidden for years. Victoria did not excuse her sister, but neither did she abandon her. Elena expected to leave the mansion forever. Instead, 3 days later, Victoria arrived at her apartment. She climbed the narrow stairs in expensive shoes and stopped outside a door with peeling paint. Matteo opened it while holding a cereal bowl. Behind him, Elena stood in surprise. Victoria carried the cracked brown book. "I believe this belongs to your son." Matteo shook his head. "Noah can keep it." Victoria knelt so they were eye to eye. "He wants to share it with you." From that day forward, Matteo and Noah spent Saturdays repairing old cameras at the kitchen table. One boy had money but had forgotten how to trust. The other had very little but knew how to give. Victoria offered Elena her old job back with higher pay, but Elena declined. "I don't want to return as someone people can accuse without thinking," she said. So Victoria offered something different. She asked Elena to lead a new employee protection program across the company's hotels and private properties, giving housekeepers, drivers, cleaners, and kitchen workers a safe way to report abuse and false accusations. Elena accepted. Not because the title impressed her, but because she remembered her mother's words. "Always protect the truth, even alone." Months later, the old photograph hung in Elena's new office beside a framed children's drawing. In it, 2 boys stood beneath a yellow sun, holding a repaired camera between them. Noah began speaking more. Matteo received the medical care he needed. And every year, Victoria hosted the same charity dinner, but now the people who cleaned the rooms, served the food, and guarded the doors were invited as honored guests. The diamond ring remained valuable. But it was no longer the most important thing saved that night. Sometimes, the person everyone overlooks is the only one paying attention. And sometimes, one small act of kindness becomes the evidence that changes an entire life. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters. Leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe for more stories that remind us never to judge a person by the uniform they wear.